stumbling and slipping down the up staircase to the tune of Toad singing Starman. You crack against the balustrade and windmill into infinity. Is this the 12-fold, the temporal tautology? Or have you just entered the umbral zone? When we enter the Weeping City of Mhach, that forgotten capital of the ancient warmongering black mages, we push through a swarm of Vilekin to meet their supposed mother. A straightforward seeming encounter, but one that nevertheless converges a number of clues to an incredible backstory between her name, her association with the minions of Skathak, and her genesis at the hands of the Allagan Empire. To appreciate this story, we must first turn to her namesake in Arachne, and to the world of ancient Greece as told by the Roman poet Ovid through his Metamorphoses, where a story of mortal hubris stands out just as much today as a celebration of defiance and courage to rival that of Sisyphus. Arachne, a poor and modest woman from a small town in Lydia with not a drop of noble blood, had through hard work alone entranced not only men and women from across the country, but even nymphs from the rivers and mountains, with her talent as an artist without equal in weaving and tapestry. It was often said as a point of praise that she must have been taught by Athena, goddess of weaving and arts. But Arachne was insulted by the idea that her skills were simply a token and the credit of a divine teacher, declaring that she would concede this to be the case only if Athena herself challenged and beat her in contest. But this protest reached the ears of the jealous Athena, and she approached Arachne in the guise of an old woman, demanding that the weaver beg forgiveness of the goddess for her blasphemy. Arachne replied in defiance, and so Athena revealed herself and accepted the challenge. Athena weaved a scene depicting her victorious dispute with Poseidon over the city of Athens, a mighty olive tree bursting from the ground where she had planted her spear, surrounded by a collection of scenes of mortal beings that had defied the Olympian gods and faced retribution. Arachne, in reply, weaved the familiar stories of Zeus raping Europa whilst in the form of a bull, Asteria whilst in the form of an eagle, Leda as a swan, Antiope as a satyr, and so on in the various forms not only Zeus but also Poseidon, Ouranos, and Dionysus had used to take advantage of countless other women. Athena's fury at beholding the finished work was only compounded by her inability to deny that Arachne's skill was demonstrably greater than her own. In a fit of rage, she beat the girl and drove her to hang herself, and as she hanged there, Athena, either out of pity or more likely a sense of irony, cursed Arachne so that her body broke and warped into the form of a spider, that she might spend her days silently weaving evermore. Our Arachne, stalking the Yaphaeum Saltmoor, is obviously a kind of spider hybrid, but she also has a very strong connection in Eorzea to weaving and to a similarly forced metamorphosis. Arachne web is a crafting material that can currently be traded for Grand Company seals and is used by weavers in the I-110 Arachne sets, as well as the more recent replica Allagan, High Allagan, and Dreadworm gear. Furthermore, its description is rather telling. The wire-like web of the Allagan chimerical miscreation, Arachne. I think we can soundly surmise at this point that our Arachne Eve is the same Allagan chimera to which this description refers. So how and why was she created? And what is she doing here amidst the ruins of Mhach 5 millennia later? At the pinnacle of Allagan ethereal science was their developments in genetic manipulation, chimerism, and cloning under the direction of the technologist Amon. Amon also revived the first emperor and now mad tyrant Zande, whom led Allag back to war, finally subjugating Mericidia and bringing a great many annexed peoples under his tyrannical rule. If the treatment of the Mericidian dragons is any indication of Allagan policy towards its conquered foes, it is clear that these peoples were considered a resource and a pool for these macabre experiments. So it is possible that Arachne was a child of Mericidia, or another conquered land, but the human features we can still see in her do not resemble those of a beastman or a Mericidian Mikote. In fact, they look distinctly Hior, and just possibly distinctly Allagan. So I'd like to propose another theory, and one that fits in with the theme of the Greek Arachne. Aemon was inspired to revive Zande by the Empire's supposed stagnancy at the time. But it would be that a man who idolizes warmongers considers a time of peace and artistic expression to be stagnant. And so we know from the Crystal Tower questline that not everyone was satisfied with the chaotic return of Zande, and there were in fact a number of rebellions and uprisings during the Empire's twilight. I think it may be the case that just as the Greek Arachne defied the rapacious tyrants of Olympia, the Allagan Arachne was likely an artisan or scientist contemporary of Aemon that refused to yield to the newly resurrected God King, refused to contribute her talents to his glory, and was subsequently made an example of by the tyrant, just as her Greek counterpart, as subject for a twisted prototype synthetic voice and chimerism. Her second bequeathed title, Eve, only reaffirms the position. Although many Abrahamic schools believe Eve to have been the first woman, and therefore Arachne Eve might be the first of human voids and chimeras, or the first of the realm's Vialkin, the Catholic Church and most Christian Orthodox churches accept a slightly different canon as told by the Ecclesiasticus of Sirach, in which Eve is strictly second to another, condemned, whom we have mentioned in a previous video, Lilith. Lilith, too, spat in the face of her tyrants. God created her from the earth as he created Adam so that he might not be alone, but when Adam demanded that she lie beneath him, her answer was that they were equal, both created from the earth, that she would not so categorically submit to him, and they argued until she flew away. So she was commanded by the angels to return, and when she refused, they drowned her in the sea and dragged her down to hell, where God condemned 100 of her children to die every day for the rest of time. The placid Eve was then made from Adam's rib, as the redemption of womankind in the eyes of Adam and God for the failure of Lilith to yield and submit. In the eyes of her creator, or more properly her recreator, the Allagan Arachne Eve is surely too a redemption of a rebel, from virtues wasted to now something useful, something compliant, a successful experiment and perhaps even an effective tool of war. So Arachne, in this narrative of ancient Eorzea, was now as much void-sent as human, but unlikely felt any allegiance with the Void's Allagan collaborators serving under the cloud of darkness. I believe that she would have remained in Allagan custody, perhaps in Azys Lar, until Zande brought about the end of their age by channeling the energy of Dalamud into the Crystal Tower and obliterating all civilization in the process. She would then have descended into the ruined world below, making a home for herself in some dark corner of the realm, and there remaining in solitude for millennia before being discovered by the young Marquis civilization and finding herself a slave to men once again, this time beside the children and followers of Queen Skathak, and forced to ward their wretched city. In fact, she was in Yaphaem so long that the Vialkin she spawned became synonymous with the place. But just as she survived Allag, the Great Flood eventually came and drowned the warring Magi civilizations, drowned the city of Mhach, as its survivors fled in their ark with as many bound void-sent slaves as they could carry, and once again left only Arachne. But when the floods receded, Diabolos broke free from his prison in Amdapor, liberated his queen from the Void Ark, and returned to Yaphaem, and Arachne would have been only too eager to help them exact retribution against man, whom she hated and feared for her wretched treatment throughout the ages. So she agreed to stall with Forgal and intercept the pursuers of Diabolos, only to find that even having survived thousands of years of empires and wars and torture and calamities. She could not survive the Warrior of Light. This story is, of course, very speculative, but with the limited knowledge we have of Arachne Eve, it is sound and probably not too far from the mark. A tragic story of the witting and unwitting cruelty of man, intolerance of plurality, and literally monstrous ambition. So next time you enter the Yaphaeum Saltmoor, take pity on wretched Arachne, and next time you stumble into the Umbral Zone, I will be waiting. Thanks for watching.